Before this reading is over, you're going to understand why your soulmate has been carrying around words they never found the courage to send. What makes this so powerful is that the message wasn't written during an ordinary moment. It came from a place deep within them, a place they usually keep hidden from everyone around them. Recently, something shifted inside your soulmate. A thought about you appeared unexpectedly and refused to leave. No matter how much they tried to focus on other things, their mind kept returning to the same memories, the same questions, and the same emotions connected to you. Eventually, those feelings became too heavy to keep locked away. What started as a simple thought soon became an urge to express everything they had been holding inside. Your soulmate found themselves staring at a blank screen, a blank page, or simply imagining the words they wished they could say. At first, they only intended to write a few sentences. Perhaps they wanted closure. Perhaps they wanted understanding. Perhaps they simply wanted to organize their thoughts. But the moment they began, something unexpected happened. The emotional walls they had spent so much time building started coming down. As the words flowed, they realized they were writing things they rarely admit, even to themselves. Feelings they had buried beneath distractions suddenly resurfaced. Memories they thought they had moved beyond became vivid once again. The more they wrote, the more honest they became. It was as though the message was revealing truths they had been avoiding for far too long. Every sentence carried a piece of their heart, and with each passing moment, they found it harder to stop. Because your heart needs this right now, understand that this message was never meant to be casual. It became something much deeper than your soulmate expected. What began as a few thoughts quickly transformed into a confession of emotions they could no longer ignore. And as they looked at the words appearing in front of them, they realized something that caught them completely off guard. The message wasn't just revealing what they wanted to tell you. It was revealing what their heart had been trying to tell them all along. And what they discovered in those words would change the entire direction of everything that followed. And listen carefully, because the reason your soulmate started writing this message goes much deeper than a passing thought or a random moment of emotion. What inspired them to put those feelings into words was something they could no longer escape. For weeks, perhaps even longer, they had been carrying certain thoughts about you that kept appearing at unexpected times. They would be focused on something completely unrelated, and suddenly a memory involving you would enter their mind. Not the dramatic memories, not the obvious ones. Instead, it was the small moments that seemed to follow them. The moments they once overlooked, the moments they never realized would become so important later. Recently, your soulmate has been experiencing a period of reflection unlike anything they expected. Life has a strange way of slowing people down when there is something important they need to understand. And during these quiet moments, they began noticing how often your presence still appeared in their thoughts. Certain situations reminded them of conversations you shared. Certain challenges reminded them of advice you once gave. Certain emotions reminded them of how they felt when you were part of their daily life. At first, they ignored these reminders. They told themselves it was normal. They convinced themselves it meant nothing. Yet the reminders continued. What makes this situation different is that your soulmate wasn't trying to think about you. In fact, part of them was trying not to. They believed they had already processed certain emotions. They believed they had already accepted certain realities. But every time they attempted to move their attention elsewhere, something kept pulling them back toward the same unanswered feelings. That internal struggle eventually became impossible to ignore. The thoughts became louder, the questions became deeper, and before they realized what was happening, they found themselves opening a space where they could finally express everything honestly, because your heart needs this right now. Understand that the message did not begin as a confession. It began as a search for understanding. Your soulmate wanted answers. They wanted clarity. They wanted to understand why certain emotions still existed after so much time had passed. Writing became their way of exploring those questions. They started putting thoughts onto the page without expecting anything significant to happen. But the moment they began writing, something shifted. The words seemed to come faster than expected. Emotions they thought were under control suddenly demanded attention. And listen to this. The deeper they went into the message, the more vulnerable they became. They stopped writing from the mind and started writing from the heart. Instead of describing events, they described feelings. Instead of focusing on circumstances, they focused on impact. They began acknowledging things they had never said aloud. They admitted how often certain memories returned. They admitted how much specific moments still meant to them. They admitted that your influence on their life remained stronger than they wanted to admit. As the message continued growing, your soulmate noticed something surprising. The act of writing was revealing truths they had spent a long time avoiding. Every sentence uncovered another layer of honesty. Every paragraph brought another realization to the surface. The message was no longer about explaining the past. It was becoming a reflection of their present emotions. And the more they wrote, the harder it became to deny what was happening. Because hidden between the lines of every thought and every memory was one undeniable truth. The feelings they believed had faded were still alive, and the deeper they wrote, the more impossible it became to pretend otherwise. And listen to this, because somewhere in the middle of writing that message, your soulmate stopped trying to organize their thoughts and started revealing their truth. What makes this part so powerful is that the message was never really about explaining what happened between you. It became something much deeper than that. It became a window into feelings they had kept hidden, even from themselves. The words began exposing emotions they usually protect behind silence, distractions, and everyday life. As they continued writing, your soulmate noticed something unexpected. The things that mattered most were not the events they remembered. They were the feelings attached to those events. Suddenly, the message shifted away from circumstances and moved towards something much more personal. They found themselves writing about the impact you had on them. Not just what you did, but what changed because of your presence. Not just the moments you shared, but the emotional mark those moments left behind. Because your heart needs this right now. Understand that your soulmate wrote things they rarely allow themselves to think about. They admitted that certain memories involving you never fully disappeared. They admitted that there are moments when your name enters their mind without warning. They admitted that despite everything life has placed between you, certain feelings continue appearing when they least expect them. What surprised them most was how natural these admissions felt once they were written down. It was as though a part of their heart had been waiting for permission to finally speak and listen carefully. There was one particular realization that kept appearing throughout the message in different forms. No matter what subject they started with, their thoughts always returned to the same place. They kept acknowledging how much you influenced their life. Sometimes people do not recognize the importance of a connection while they are living it. Understanding arrives later. Clarity arrives later. Your soulmate is beginning to experience that clarity now. As they wrote, they realized that certain lessons they learned, certain changes they experienced, and certain perspectives they gained were connected to you in ways they had never fully appreciated before. The message also contained something else, gratitude, not necessarily the kind of gratitude people express openly, but the kind that quietly grows inside when someone realizes another person helped shape their journey. Your soulmate found themselves acknowledging moments they never properly appreciated. They remembered kindness they overlooked, support they underestimated, understanding they took for granted. The deeper they reflected, the more they realized how much of your influence remained present in their life. Because your heart needs this right now, there were also admissions that surprised even them. They confessed feelings of curiosity about your life. They admitted wondering how you have changed, what you are thinking, and whether certain memories still mean as much to you as they do to them. These were not questions they intended to write, yet once they appeared on the page they could not erase them. The honesty had already been revealed. And listen to this. The most powerful part of the message was not what your soulmate wrote about the past. It was what they wrote about the present. For the first time, they stopped pretending that everything connected to you belonged to another chapter of their life. The message revealed that your presence still exists within their emotional world. Maybe not in ways they fully understand yet, but in ways they can no longer deny. Every paragraph seemed to point toward the same truth. Every sentence uncovered another layer of honesty. And by the time they reached the end of the message, they found themselves staring at a realization that completely changed its meaning. What began as an attempt to express a few lingering thoughts had become undeniable. Proof that their feelings about you were far more alive than they ever expected them to be. And listen carefully, because this is the part of the story that surprised your soulmate the most. Writing the message felt difficult, but not nearly as difficult as what happened after it was finished. Once the final words were written, once every hidden feeling had been placed onto the page, they found themselves staring at something they never expected to create. For the first time in a very long time, they were looking at an honest reflection of their heart. There were no distractions, no excuses, no emotional walls protecting them from the truth. Everything they had been carrying inside was sitting right in front of them, and that realization made them stop. For a moment, your soulmate considered sending it. They imagined what would happen if those words finally reached you. They imagined the relief of no longer keeping everything hidden. They imagined what it would feel like to finally express emotions that had remained trapped inside for so long. But alongside that relief came another feeling. Fear. Not fear of the message itself, but fear of what could happen after it was received, because your heart needs this right now. Understand that your soulmate is someone who has spent a long time protecting certain parts of themselves. Vulnerability is powerful, but it can also feel frightening when someone is not used to exposing their deepest emotions. The message contained more than words. It contained admissions. It contained truths. It contained feelings they could no longer pretend were insignificant. Sending it would mean allowing another person to see parts of them that they usually keep hidden from the world. As they reread the message, their emotions began moving in opposite directions. One part of them felt certain the message should be sent. That part understood that honesty creates freedom. That part wanted clarity. That part wanted to stop carrying unanswered feelings. But another part of them became overwhelmed with questions. What if the timing was wrong? What if too much time had passed? What if the message created more complications than solutions? What if the words were misunderstood? These questions started growing louder with every minute. And listen to this. The strange thing is that your soulmate did not delete the message. They did not erase the words. They did not pretend the emotions never existed. Instead, they saved it. They kept it close. That decision reveals something important. It reveals that the message still matters to them. If the feelings had truly disappeared, the message would have disappeared with them. But it remained, quietly waiting, existing as proof of emotions they could not completely silence. Recently, your soulmate has found themselves returning to those words again and again. Sometimes they read only a few lines. Sometimes they revisit the entire message. Every time they do, the same emotional conflict returns. The desire to express themselves battles against the fear of exposing themselves. The desire for honesty battles against uncertainty about the outcome. And this internal struggle has become one of the most important lessons of their journey, because your heart needs this right now. There is something significant happening beneath the surface. The message has already accomplished something your soulmate never expected. It forced them to stop running from the truth. Whether the message was sent or not, the feelings behind it became impossible to deny. The act of writing transformed vague emotions into undeniable reality. It showed them exactly how much they still care. It showed them exactly what their heart has been carrying all this time. And listen carefully, because this is where everything begins to shift. Your soulmate is slowly realizing that fear may have stopped their finger from pressing send, but it did not erase the truth they discovered while writing. The words still exist. The emotions still exist. The realization still exists. And the more time passes, the more they understand that the unsent message is no longer just a collection of words. It has become a reminder of something much deeper. A reminder that some feelings refuse to stay hidden forever. And deep down, they are beginning to wonder how much longer they can keep carrying those words without eventually finding the courage to let them be heard. And listen to this, because the most important part of this story is not that the message was never sent. The most important part is what happened after it was written. Long after the screen was closed, long after the page was folded away, and long after the emotions settled, something remained. The message changed your soulmate, not in a dramatic way that happened overnight, but in a quiet way that slowly reshaped how they understood this connection. Sometimes people believe that communication only matters when another person receives it. But your soulmate is discovering that some messages are powerful simply because they force the writer to confront the truth. What they wrote became more than words. It became evidence. Evidence of feelings they could no longer dismiss. Evidence of memories that still carried meaning. Evidence that a part of their heart was holding on to something much deeper than they realized. Before writing the message, they could avoid certain questions. They could distract themselves. They could tell themselves different stories. But once those thoughts existed in written form, avoiding them became much more difficult, because your heart needs this right now. Understand that your soulmate has revisited those emotions many times since writing the message. Not always intentionally. Sometimes a quiet moment brings them back. Sometimes a memory triggers them unexpectedly. Sometimes they simply find themselves wondering what would have happened if those words had actually reached you. Yet every time they revisit the message, they notice something interesting. The feelings remain consistent. The emotions remain recognizable. The truth remains unchanged, and listen carefully. One of the biggest surprises for your soulmate has been realizing how much clarity emerged from an act they never intended to be significant. They thought they were writing to release emotions. Instead, they ended up understanding them. They thought they were organizing their thoughts. Instead, they uncovered them. What started as an emotional exercise became a mirror reflecting something they had not fully acknowledged before. The message revealed that their connection to you was not based on temporary feelings or passing curiosity. It was rooted in something far more meaningful. Recently, your soulmate has started viewing the unsent message differently. At first, they saw it as something unfinished, something incomplete, something suspended between expression and silence. But now they are beginning to see it as a turning point, a moment when they stopped hiding from their own emotions, a moment when honesty became stronger than denial. Even if no one else ever reads those words, they served a purpose. They revealed the truth to the person who needed to see it most. Because your heart needs this right now, there is another realization slowly growing within them. The message may have remained unsent, but the emotions behind it continue moving forward. Feelings do not disappear simply because they remain unspoken. Truth does not lose its power simply because it stays hidden for a while. In many ways, writing the message created a new beginning rather than an ending. It started a process of self-awareness that continues unfolding every day. And listen to this, because it is the heart of everything your soulmate has learned. They are no longer wondering whether their feelings were real. They are no longer questioning whether this connection mattered. The message answered those questions. What they are discovering now is something even more important. They are discovering that honesty has a way of changing people. Once the heart tells the truth, even in private, it becomes impossible to completely return to the version of yourself that was pretending not to know. The words they never sent continue living inside them, not as a burden, but as a reminder of what they feel, a reminder of what they value, a reminder of a connection that left a deeper impact than they once understood. And perhaps the greatest surprise of all is this: the message was never really written for you alone. It was written for their own heart. It was written so they could finally see what had been hidden beneath the surface for so long. And now that they have seen it, now that they have faced it honestly, they know one thing with complete certainty. The truth contained in those unsent words is far too powerful to remain ignored forever.